Hi everyone, my name is Yong Ziling and I am the group leader for this group. And they are my group members. We have Crystal Lim, Charlene Chin, Bella, Oi Kai Wen, Kok Moon Shin, and Carmen Leong. In this video, we are going to discuss three questions: the development of common law and equity, the role of the superior and inferior courts in developing precedent, and lastly, the advantages and disadvantages of judicial precedent. Now, let us proceed into the first question.
My name is Charlene Chin Joey. Today, I will be talking about the development of common law. The English legal system, recognized as the original common law system, has shaped the legal traditions of many nations, particularly those with a British colonial history. Rooted in medieval England, common law evolved from judicial decisions that drew on tradition, customs, and precedent. The adversarial system, meaning judges decide based on the arguments presented by the party involved, as highlighted in the case of Jones and National Coal Board 1957. Common law relies on case-based reasoning, known as casuistry, and includes both unwritten principles and codified statutes, creating a versatile and enduring legal framework. The English common law originated in the early Middle Ages within the King's Court, Cura Regis, established as Westminster after the Norman conquest of 1066. Initially, this legal system emphasized procedural remedies over substantive rights, with local customs and the church significantly influencing governance and legal matters. Early on, crimes were treated as wrongs warranting compensation to victims, reflecting a compensatory approach to justice. Over time, the development of these procedural remedies evolved into a modern system prioritizing rights over procedure. Until the late 19th century, English common law was primarily developed by judges through their decisions rather than by legislators, resulting in a body of law significantly shaped by judicial precedent. In medieval England, the legal system was decentralized, with local customs varying from place to place. Circuit officials, also known as the itinerant judges or justices in Ivy, they will travel around the country to hear cases. After completing their circuits, these officials would return to Westminster, where they report their findings and experiences. This practice helped to ensure that local customs and decisions were recorded and reviewed consensually, contributing to a more uniform legal system. Upon returning to Westminster, these circuit officials would convene in the royal courts. Westminster was the political and legal hub of England, where the central courts such as the Court of King's Bench, the Court of Common Pleas, and the Exchequer were located. These royal courts were responsible for hearing cases of significant importance and served as the highest judicial authorities in the land. The presence of itinerant judges in these courts ensured that local legal customs and decisions were integrated into the central legal system. Excuse me. The itinerant judges encountered various local customs and traditions as they traveled. By evaluating these customs and selecting the most just and practical one, they began to create a more standardized set of legal principles. This selection process was essential in transforming disparate local practices into a cohesive body of law. The judges' decisions were based on fairness, practicality, and the precedent set by earlier judgment, gradually forming a common legal framework. The rules and principles developed from amalgamation of local customs form the basis of what is known as jus communi or common law. This body of law was characterized by its general applicability and was enforced uniformly across England. By standardizing legal rules, common law provided consistency and predictability in legal processing, ensuring that similar cases were treated alike regardless of their location. A fundamental principle of common law is the doctrine of stare decisis, which means stand by things decided. This doctrine mandates that courts should follow precedent established in previous cases when making their decisions. Binding precedent ensures the law evolves in a consistent and logical manner, allowing for stability and continuity in the legal system. This principle requires judges to respect their decisions of higher court and to apply established legal principles to new cases with similar facts, thus reinforcing the uniformity of common law across the country. In conclusion, the development of common law was a gradual process that transformed local customs into a unified legal system. By consolidating various traditions through the work of circuit officials and royal courts, and by adhering to the doctrine of stare decisis, England established a robust and predictable legal framework that laid the foundation for modern common law systems around the world.
Hi, my name is Yong Ziling, and now I'm going to talk about the development of equity. Plato stated, equity is a necessary element supplementary to the imperfect generalization of legal rules. Equity is a legal system to obtain a fair result when the existing laws do not provide a solution. It consists of a set of legal principles, also known as the maxims, that supplement strict rules of law where the application would operate harshly. So in contrast to common law, maxims are more flexible, inclined to take account of the parties' conduct and worthiness. We are going to look at how equity developed. Equity was created to reduce the severity of common law rulings. So while the royal courts and rulings provided the advantages of a generally accessible legal system with a uniform set of guidelines, they also grew strict and persistent, disregard the fairness in the sake of legal certainty. So in order to find a more equitable resolution, all the offended litigants started to petition the chancellor around the 13th century. They named him as the keeper of the king's conscience. The Court of Chancery developed where decisions were made based on two things, fairness and reasons, and so the notion of equity was founded. Since all the principles and standards created by the Lord Chancellors were founded on the ideas of justice and fairness, they came to known as the equity. The purpose of equity is to introduce the principles of fairness, flexibility, and conscience, as well as to provide more flexible remedies such as injunctions, specific performance, rectification, and rescission. Equity did not replace common law but supplemented it. This is to ensure justice could be achieved. According to the Earl of Oxford's case, it was decided that when there is a conflict between common law and equity, equity was to prevail. The court will apply equitable rule. This is to tailor decisions to specific circumstances, ensure a fair outcome that rigid legal rules might overlook. Here are some of the equitable maxims. The first one is, he who seeks equity must do equity. In the case of Chappell and Times newspaper, the employees of Times launched a strike against their employer. The employers then threatened to sack the employees unless they stopped their strike. The employees went to the court and applied for injunction to prevent the employer from carrying such threat. The court held that in order for the injunction to be awarded, strikers should undertake to withdraw from the strike. So in this case, we can see that if a party is seeking for equitable remedy, he must also treat his opponent equitably. Next one is equity follows the law. This indicates the relationship between common law and equity, which implies that equity would intervene with the common law if justice required it. Next one is equity acts in persona. This means to act upon a person's conscience. In the case of Ewing and All Ewing, a man died while domiciled in England. The executors of his estate were in England, claimed that they were not under an obligation to administer the deceased estate. The court held that the administration of his estate could administer the estate in England, therefore extending their jurisdiction because equity acts in persona. The last equitable maxims we are going to look at today is he who comes to equity must come with clean hands. This can be seen in the case of Cleaver and Mutual Reserve Fund Life Association. The primary issue in this case was whether the plaintiff, having been convicted of the murder, could still claim the insurance money from his wife's policy. The court held that Cleaver could not benefit from his own wrongdoing. It ruled that allowing him to claim the insurance money would be contrary to the public policy. The principle "no one shall profit from his own wrong" was applied. This is to prevent Cleaver from receiving any benefit from the insurance policy due to his criminal act of murder. So to sum up, equity serves as an essential element to the common law, providing justice and fairness to individuals where the application of strict rules may lead to an unjust outcome. Its goal is to ensure justice and fairness are met in certain circumstances. So with all these available equitable maxims, we can ensure equitable outcomes in legal disputes, therefore improving the efficacy of the legal system. That's all from me. Thank you.
My name is Crystal, and now I'm going to present what are the role of Superior Court in developing precedents. The hierarchy of English court is divided into two divisions, which are the Civil Division and Criminal Division. The Superior Court are the higher court in the hierarchy, which include the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeal, and the High Court. First of all, the Supreme Court is the highest legal body in the legal structure. The last Court of Appeal, it handles extremely significant civil and criminal appeals. It is typically only considered cases that the public find to be extremely important. And up until 1966, the Supreme Court considered itself bound by decision from its own past, and its decisions are binding on all courts below it. Besides, Supreme Court also have the authority to overrule a decision made by the court itself if necessary. One of the example case is Atherton and Ryan 1985. In this case, the court decided that someone could not be found guilty of trying to commit an impossible crime. However, in the future case of Au and Sri Puri 1986, the court overturned this ruling, stating that a person might be found guilty of trying to commit an impossible crime, even if they thought the circumstances were as they appear to be. And if the court established a new precedent, it will replace the prior one. Besides, the second highest court are known as the Court of Appeal. Unlike Supreme Court, Court of Appeal is divided into civil division and criminal divisions. As for the civil division, it handles appeals on issues like contract dispute and family law, and it is usually requiring permission to appeals. It is typically bound by the Supreme Court and its own previous division. But Young and Brestow Aeroplane Company Limited 1924 established a clear exception, such as when there are conflicting decisions, a previous decision has been overruled or when the decision was met per incumbent, which means in error or innocence of relevant authorities. And for the criminal division, it examines cases from the Crown Court, addressing potential error in sentencing or conviction and ensuring fair treatment of defendants. The criminal division is also bound by the Supreme Court and its own prior decision, but can depart from its past ruling in cases of misunderstanding or misapplication of the law. Overall, the Court of Appeals may review lower court decisions to ensure fairness and accuracy. This structure promotes consistency and reliability in legal decisions while allowing for necessary adjustment in exceptional cases. And the decision made by them will be binding on the court defendant. Lastly, the High Court are the lowest court among all the superior court. They are bounded by the law of precedent established by the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals. All decisions made by High Court are binding to the court below them. Besides, serious criminal cases and more complicated civil claims are the court's primary focus. Under Civil Division, it is further divided into three different divisions, which are the Queensland Division, Chancery Division, and Family Divisions. Queensland Division hears cases involving judicial review, statutory appeal, shipping and maritime dispute, national and international business dispute, including commodities, banking, international trade, arbitration dispute, and many more. Besides, for Chancery Division, it handles matters involving contract, tort, trust, contested probate, taxation, partnership, bankruptcy, and etc. For Family Divisions, it is primarily handle all marriage issues, including child custody, parenthood, adoption, family homes, domestic abuse, separation, annulments, divorce, and declaration of medical care, as well as uncontested probate matters and other issues. And Queen's Bench Division are the only division in criminal division. It is mainly hear cases involving criminal matters. Although the rulings are not legally binding on judges of the same level, they are generally persuasive and competitive. In conclusion, all superior courts have the authority to establish precedent. By adhering to established precedents, the legal system ensures consistency and predictability, promoting fairness and reliability in judicial decisions. Additionally, precedent provide a framework for lower court, enhancing judicial efficiency and reducing the likelihood of contradictory judgment.
Hi, my name is Bella and I will be covering on the role of the inferior courts in developing precedents. So the inferior courts originated from the principle in which justice should be taken to every man's door by constituting as many courts as there were manors in the kingdom. They obtained their general title of inferior courts as they were and still are in majority subject to the control and supervision of the Court of King's Bench Division and King's Bench. A decision of an inferior court does not bind a higher court. However, a course of decisions may have considerable influence. The courts that are listed as inferior courts include the Magistrates Court, the Crown Court, and the County Court. So let's dive into the first court, which is the Magistrates Court. Around 95% of criminal cases are handled in the Magistrates Court. That includes summary offenses, which are minor offenses, along with either way offenses, which are more serious cases. However, it depends on the severity of the offense to decide whether it should be tried in the Magistrates Court or the Crown Court. The Magistrates Court also deals with civil cases such as licensing, family matters, and minor disputes. The court is composed by lay magistrates, which translates to volunteers or people without any formal legal training, or professionally qualified judges. Moving on to Crown Court, the Crown Court is where indictable offenses or serious criminal cases such as rape, murder, or robbery are handled. The Crown Court also deals with appeals from the Magistrates Court. The trials that are held in the Crown Court typically involve a judge and also jury members. Lastly, let's talk about the county court. The county court handles a wide range of civil cases in its original jurisdiction by circuit or district judges. For instance, here are some cases that can be held in the county court. Personal injury claims, such as individuals who are seeking compensation for their injuries, and also debt recovery for businesses that would like to recover money that they are owed. So now I will talk about the impact of the roles of the inferior courts in developing precedents. As mentioned earlier, the decision of inferior courts does not bind a higher court, but a course of decisions may provide considerable influence. It can be seen that inferior courts gradually contribute to the development of legal principles by consistent rulings on similar cases, which helps build a body of case laws that higher courts can refine. So I've picked a case that can be set as an example. The case of Caparo Industries PLC and Dickman shows how the duty of care principle in negligence cases were developed by the influence of lower courts. So the lower courts interpreted and implemented prior rulings, which then their decisions helped the House of Lords shape the three-part test in Caparo. For example, in the case of Caparo Industries PLC and Dickman, it shows how the duty of care principle in negligence cases were developed by the influence of lower courts, because the lower courts had interpreted and implemented prior rulings. So in the end, the collective decisions between the lower courts had helped the House of Lords shape the three-part test in Caparo. Other than that, inferior courts also play their role by addressing ambiguities or gaps within existing precedents. For instance, in the case of R against Cunningham, where the meaning of maliciously was considered ambiguous in the case, but the lower courts was interpreting whether or not recklessness constituted malicious intent. However, the case was then appealed to the Court of Appeal, where it was clarified that maliciously includes recklessness. And in this case, you can see that the impact of their interpretation has shaped future interpretations of criminal law and mens rea.
Hi, today we're diving into the role of judicial precedent, which is like a compass guiding legal decisions in the English legal system. Think of it as the GPS of the courtroom, helping judges navigate through past rulings to make fair and consistent decisions. But like any tool, it has its ups and downs. Let's take a closer look at the advantages and disadvantages of relying on judicial precedent in our legal system. Before we start, let me introduce myself. My name is Carmen, and I'm going to talk about the advantages of judicial precedent today. Okay, so the first advantage I'll talk about is certainty. If the courts have to follow established precedents, then it becomes relatively straightforward to anticipate the outcome of the case even before it goes to trial. This allows a solicitor to provide precise and reliable advice on whether it's worthwhile or pointless for a client to pursue a matter. This can save individuals both time and money in court, and it can also assist them to avoid potentially embarrassing or nerve-wracking legal proceedings. The House of Lords practice statement emphasizes the importance of certainty. I have an example here. In the case of R&R 1991, basically the case is about the defendant challenged his conviction for attempted rape, claiming that a husband cannot rape his wife. The House of Lords overruled the old common law principle that marriage always granted consent for sexual intercourse, ruling that a husband might be convicted of rape or attempted rape if his wife withdrew her consent. Okay. So let's move on to the next slide. Okay. The next advantage is efficiency and consistency. Precedent simplifies the legal process by providing a reference point for judges when deciding cases, rather than starting over with each case. Judges can utilize established precedents to issue rulings more efficiently. This promotes justice by ensuring that similar cases are treated similarly. In the case of Donoghue and Stevenson is an example for this advantage. The ruling in Donoghue and Stevenson was significant because it established the basis. The ruling in Donahue and Stevenson was significant because it established the basis for modern negligence law. This landmark case and its principles continues to be highly influential in current legal practice. Okay. So, the last advantage I will talk about today is flexibility. There is also potential for the law to change, as the Supreme Court can utilize the Practice Statement 1966 to overrule previous decisions. This statement gives judges flexibility to set aside past decisions and develop the law. Like above, I have an example too. My example is the case of merit and merit. Wait, this can also be a disadvantage, but let me explain why I chose this case. So basically, in this case, the court distinguished this case from Balfour and Balfour by pointing out that the merits were separated when they signed their agreement. Lord Denning highlighted that when spouses are not living harmoniously or are in the process of divorcing, the presumptions against legal relations in domestic agreements as established in Balfour does not always apply. Now that I've ended my discussion, I'll hand it over to my friend Abby. Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is AB. One of the advantages of judicial precedent is fairness and equality. Judicial precedent ensures fairness and equality by having consistent and certain application of law to similar cases, which help ensure that all cases will have equal treatment. In some cases, the courts follow established precedents and apply the same reasoning and principle. This helps keeps the consistency and predictability which the law provides. All individuals are also subject to the same legal standards to ensure that everyone is treated fairly. The judges are impartial, and since they are making decisions that are guided by past decisions, it helps maintain impartiality in judicial decision-making. In the case of Brown and Board of Education, it is a case which involves racial segregation in public school. This case is significant because of how judicial precedent ensures that fairness and equality is served when dealing with racial segregation without having any biases toward one race or another. Another advantage for judicial precedent would be guidance for judges. Judicial precedent offers a very structured and reliable foundation for judicial decision-making for the judges and for the lawyers to refer to. Judicial precedent also provides an established legal principles which serve as a guideline from past cases for the judges to refer and to follow to apply the law. This also ensures consistency as it maintains the integrity and the stability of the legal system. In many cases of the legal system, many judges will and would follow the past decisions of any cases that was made before the current situation. Starting with the disadvantages of judicial precedent, the first disadvantage would be rigidity. Rigidity is inflexible due to the binding nature that the higher courts have on the lower courts. Some past decisions may no longer be suitable or appropriate for the current circumstances, but the lower courts will still have to apply the previous decision due to judicial precedent. An example would be in the case of R&R, where rape was considered to not be illegal in a marriage. The act of marriage allowed the husband to satisfy his sexual needs with his wife. Many cases in the 20th century were bound to R&R until R and Clark was an exception, which an exception would be made. The next disadvantage would be complexity. Complexity in judicial precedent originated from lawyers and judges having to manage an extensive and evolving body of case law in order to find the right legal decision. As time passes, there will be an accumulation of precedent that developed over the years which will cause complication in navigating case law. This in turn will result in lawyers and judges having difficulties in rendering accurate judgment. Not to mention, there will also be cases that will clash with one another, which will give the judges and the lawyers a harder time to figure which case they should apply without clashing with other cases. That will be all from me. I'll pass to the next person. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Wei Kaiyuan. I will also be discussing the disadvantages of judicial precedents. One of the criticisms of judicial precedents is its inherent slowness in adapting to social changes or new circumstances. The reliance on precedents means that changes in the law are contingent on new cases reaching higher courts willing to deviate from existing decisions. This process can be protracted, often leading to considerable delays in legal reforms. A notable example is R versus Cutbeard 1982. In this case, Mr. Cutbeard set fires to a hotel and was charged with arson. The House of Lords adopted an objective test for recklessness, which means that a person could be deemed reckless if they create an obvious risk, regardless of whether they realize it. These decisions were criticized for being unfair as it did not account for defendants who genuinely did not foresee the risk. It took over 2 decades for these precedents to be overturned by R versus G 2003, which reinstates a subjective test for recklessness. This case exemplifies how the reliance on precedents can delay necessary legal reforms, causing the laws to lag behind societal changes. Another significant disadvantage of judicial precedents is the potential for judicial errors to become entrenched in the legal system. When higher courts make flawed decisions, these errors can persist until corrected by a higher or the same court in future cases, potentially leading to a cycle of injustice. This issue is well illustrated by Anderson versus Ryan, 1985. Mrs. Ryan was charged with attempting to handle stolen goods despite the fact that the goods were not actually stolen. The House of Lords rules that she could not be guilty because the goods were not stolen, a decision that was quickly recognized as erroneous. These flawed decisions were promptly overruled by R versus Shipuri in 1986, which clarified that a person could be guilty of an attempt even if the crime was impossible to commit. This quick reversals demonstrates how judicial errors can temporarily disrupt the legal systems and lead to public confidence loss. The necessities for judges to follow precedents can also lead to inconsistency and unpredictability in the law. To avoid precedent, judges often make fine distinctions between cases, resulting in the mass of cases that establish different precedents in similar circumstances. This can complicate the law and make it difficult to determine which precedents will apply to a new case. Merritt versus Merritt 1970 highlights this issue. In this case, Mr. and Mrs. Merritt, who were separate, made a financial agreement that Mr. Merritt later refused to honor. The Court of Appeal held that the agreement was legally binding, distinguishing it from Belfer versus Belfer 1919, where an agreement between a happily married couple was deemed a non-binding domestic arrangement. These fine factual distinctions between these cases leads to different legal outcomes, illustrating how such distinctions can create unpredictability and inconsistency in the law. In summary, judicial precedents offer significant advantages such as certainty, efficiency and consistency, flexibility, fairness and equality, and providing clear guidance for judges. However, it also has notable disadvantages including rigidity, complexity, being slow to adapt to legal changes, the possibilities of perpetuating judicial errors, and leading to inconsistency and unpredictability through fine distinctions. By understanding these advantages and disadvantages, legal professionals can better appreciate the complexities of the doctrines of the precedents and its impacts on the legal system. Thank you.